As Ferrari celebrated once again breaking Red Bull's winning run, Verstappen regretted a rear brake fire that ended his race, while Mercedes had a horrible day with Lewis Hamilton retiring with an engine issue and George Russell crashing on the last lap. In a race, all three tyre compounds were represented on the grid, with the top 9 on mediums, followed by Fernando Alonso on hard Pirellis and Lewis Hamilton on C5s. Even before the formation lap, the Mercedes driver expressed anxiety that it was the incorrect option. Verstappen led from the line, with Carlos Sainz peaking inside turn 3, ahead of Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri. Hamilton's soft tyres helped him to grab a start on Alonso and finish 10th. With DRS on lap 2 after Verstappen's little slip at turn 7, Sainz was all over the Dutchman's back and seized the lead as he surged by at turn 9. But it was the least of his concerns, as Verstappen smoked his way around the track before losing performance and places. "I've smoked. Fire, fire, brake fire," he said before driving into the pits and withdrawing his RB20, the right rear melted by a rear brake fire. As Sainz sped away in the lead, his teammate Leclerc was in the middle of a McLaren sandwich, with everything to play for after Verstappen's DNF. George Russell was 5th ahead of Sergio Perez, while Daniel Ricciardo, who started 18th, went into the pits to switch his softs for a pair of hard Pirellis. Verstappen was forced to withdraw as he got out of his blazing RB20, explaining later that his right rear brake had been basically stuck on since the lights went down to begin the race. With temperatures surging, the brakes caught fire, causing Verstappen to drive as usual despite the sensation of having a handbrake engaged. Verstappen was heard on television telling his technician that something was stupid as he entered the pits, and the 3-time F1 world champion confirmed what the discussion had been when he talked to the media after the race. Verstappen, who had begun the race from pole position, came under assault from Ferrari's Carlos Sainz after trying to get his vehicle slowed down. The Dutch driver complained that his car was too loose. The problem was instantly revealed as smoke poured from Verstappen's RB20's rear axle, forcing him to decelerate and pit. On his way into the pits, his right rear brakes looked to burst, with flames engulfing the corner of the vehicle behind the wheel. "Well, that was related to us doing a pit stop while the car was on fire," he said with a giggle. "I was like, why are we doing this pit stop?" Verstappen said at the time that his crew could see what was going on but didn't know what had caused it. The retirement was Verstappen's first due to a technical issue since the same race 2 years ago, and the Dutch driver was able to maintain a pragmatic attitude toward his misfortune, stating that he hopes to recover quickly next time in Japan. "It excites me in a way because I would like to win," he said. "Of course, we had a lot of good races in a row, a lot of good reliability, and I knew that the day would come that you end up having a retirement, and unfortunately, that day was today. We just had already a very good run of 2 years, right? I mean, that's already quite impressive. But of course, you never like to see it happen. But it's more important now that we understand why it happened." Verstappen's retirement resulted in a number of spectators in the grandstand celebrating his fate, which he brushed off, saying, "I have a helmet on, so I don't hear that." When asked what his overriding reaction is at the conclusion of the weekend, after travelling all the way to Australia for no recompense, he replied, "Not much, to be honest," he said. "I mean, of course, I'm disappointed with not being able to finish the race because I think we would have had a good shot at winning because the balance felt quite nice on the laps to the grid." Ever since Carlos Sainz came in Maranello, there has been speculation that he is a step behind teammate Charles Leclerc, but he has once again outpaced the Monaco driver. Since that declaration, Sainz has been like a driver possessed, but it doesn't mean he hasn't been in terrific form for a while. Sainz was the most recent non-Red Bull driver to win a race going into Melbourne, and he is now the first driver not wearing blue and red to do it in 16 months. He qualified in P2, which is presumably Leclerc's strong suit, and although Max Verstappen's troubles made the overtaking difficult, Sainz still did it with reasonable ease. From there, the smooth operator delivered the confident driving we'd come to expect. He took advantage of his opponents in Singapore, but there was no need to do so in Melbourne. Leclerc remained at arm's length, while Sainz was able to keep his tyres alive for far longer than others on the grid. All this from a driver who, as things stand, will be out of the sport by December. It's comparable to Sergio Perez's predicament in 2020, when Racing Point decided to trade him for Sebastian Vettel, and the Red Bull seat he took might now be Sainz's priority. The 29-year-old is swiftly emerging as the grid's hottest property, with the potential to stroll into the majority of constructors. He would be a nice addition to Mercedes and Aston Martin if Fernando Alonso leaves. A transfer to Sauber has been discussed, but doing so now would be unworthy of Sainz's skill and accomplishments. But what about Ferrari? When was the last time a team voluntarily traded away its top-performing driver? The general affection for Hamilton, as well as Fred Vasseur's kissy faces to the 7-time world champion over the years, would undoubtedly have irritated Sainz. The omission of a farewell in the team's release demonstrated how much they valued their most recent race winner. Sainz's professionalism meant he said the right things, but his actions in the season opener demonstrated that he meant business. Permission to overtake Leclerc was not sought, and Sainz grabbed what he believed was properly his. Saudi Arabia was a setback, but only Verstappen can claim to have begun the season better than Sainz. Ferrari will say they are pleased with their choice, and Hamilton may well succeed, but Sainz is making himself tough to ignore right now. Lewis Hamilton would like to be competing for race victories or simply completing races, but he is still feeling pretty good, despite presenting a grim picture of Mercedes' chances for the remainder of the season. Hamilton was racing for minor points in Sunday's Australian Grand Prix at Albert Park when his engine failed on lap 17. It's left him with 8 points after 3 races, his poorest start to a season ever. It's worse than his first 2 seasons in the ground effect aerodynamic era, when he scored 28 and 38 points, and it's even lower than his 14 points in 2009. I mean, this is the worst start to the season I've ever had, he told the reporters in Melbourne. When asked whether it had been even worse than the prior 2, he said, "Oh yes, for sure. And it's worse than 2009, I believe." Surprisingly, he added, "I feel pretty good. I'm trying to keep things in perspective, this could be so much worse. I'm really grateful. I've really enjoyed my time here in Australia. I'm still enjoying working with the team. Of course, I'd love to be fighting for wins and actually finishing races. It's never a great feeling when you come all this way and you don't see even half of the race. But what I know is that we will bounce back. We will eventually get there. We just have to continue to chip away." However, on a day when Mercedes failed to cross the finish line, Hamilton admits Mercedes' performance is tough to swallow. The team went into pre-season testing, expecting to be in contention for podium finishes, but their best performance so far has been a 5th place finish. "I think it's tough on the spirit," he said. "I think for everyone in the team, when so much work is going on throughout the winter for everybody, you come in excited, motivated and driven, and then you're with the mindset that you're going to be fighting for wins. So it seems that this season will not be so boring after all. Verstappen's DNF, Sainz podium and Hamilton struggling with a bad car again will give us some hopes that we will see some action in this year's season. What do you think? Is this the beginning of the downfall for Max, or it is just a one-time per season thing for him to let other teams to take a podium? Let us know in the comments down below.